warm welcome to you. I'm Kritika Saxena and you're watching Inside America. I'm at the InMobi campus in the Silicon Valley in San Francisco. It's early Saturday morning and I have with me an eminent list of startups and entrepreneurs right in front of me. So let's get to it. I have with me Naveen Tiwari, co-founder and CEO of InMobi. I have Suhas, Gopinath, startup specialist, PMO India. Anand Das, co-founder and CTO of Pubmatic. Alagu Periyanan, co-founder and CTO of Blue Jeans, and Manish, Chandra, founder and CEO of Poshmark, and Pramod, Sharma, founder and CEO of Osmo. I hope I've gotten all of this correct. You know, I'm going to come to Naveen first up. Naveen, you've had a busy morning, yes, but let me just ask you, it's all about the Prime Minister Modi trying to attract investment, trying to attract startup capital, trying to learn from the startups over here to be able to build on this Startup India drive. But, you know, the conversation that you have had with the government, are things changing on the ground here in Silicon Valley? Do you believe that people are looking at India differently now?
Look, I think the thing around India, especially with the visit of Prime Minister Modi, is absolutely phenomenal because, you know, it certainly puts India at a very different level in multiple dimensions, right? To begin with, clearly the visit, indicates that, Prime Minister Modi is telling the country that the future of the country is a function of what startups can do, what innovations can our country do, and all the problems that we need to solve for in the country need to be driven through the disruption, the innovation that entrepreneurs can actually bring about. So I think the significance of his trip here is a lot more to do with things back in India itself, the messaging back in India, than here itself. Specifically here, I think, people are certainly looking for specific things that should happen on the ground. Some concrete steps. Look, he has already come here earlier, I think a year ago or so, in the US, and has given a lot of confidence to the country, to the people in the US, to do things. I think it's time that he specifically shows some concrete steps in the form of policy, etc., that indicates that we're very serious about startups. So
but
I think it's time.
Is there a difference between his first visit and now? If you look at the investor sentiment, there still seems to be a lot of people are concerned with respect to regulation. Has there been a change on ground from here that you can see from?
Look, I think the optimism continues. I don't think the people have seen concrete steps yet. And so they are absolutely waiting for that to happen. I think the trip to Silicon Valley indicates that it's not only about the incumbents, it's also about the challengers. And I think that dimension of his trip to Silicon Valley is a pretty interesting one in my mind.
All right, so let me go across to Suhas Gopinath to get some answers on that. Suhas, at a very young age, you're an advisor to the Prime Minister's office on startups specifically. So let me ask you then, there has been concern, of course, that India hasn't innovated enough. And over the last 6 months, we've seen a lot of talk about how we need to kickstart innovation as things are happening on ground. What are the ways that the Prime Minister's office, that the government is trying to change and make the ecosystem better for entrepreneurs to invest?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I've been a member of this National Expert Advisory team that has been set up by
absolutely by the Prime Minister's office.
The Prime Minister's office, and of course one of the initiatives that Department of Science and Technology has taken it. So I've been an entrepreneur myself. I started at about 14 years, and I've seen that when I founded my first company, it was from an internet shop with like 15 rupees pocket money to what it has scaled. So if you see that on the policy side, I feel that of course you have amazing initiatives that's been introduced. Let's say we have an initiative where we fund any Section 8 companies to start their own incubators. So, for example, if InMobi wants to start their own incubator, we'd be happy to fund from the state side, helping large corporations or even foundations or education institutions to start incubation and acceleration program to foster innovation. We've also seen that of course, apart from incubation that could happen and within universities or education institutions, there has been an emphasis on the policy side on outward investments also from India. How could you help Indian companies to scale even outside of India? So we will also witness some of the significant milestones on his visit at the Valley, where of course, Prime Minister's office may also be making some interesting announcements on helping startups that could scale within India and outside of India.
Give us a sense, what really will be the touch points? Because, of course, the Prime Minister will be trying to learn the lessons from startups here in Silicon Valley, try to bring back some confidence among startups that were looking at moving to Silicon Valley to invest, and that felt that India is not really the right ecosystem to be able to invest. What are the touch points that he will look into, and what are the lessons that can be taken back from the Valley?
Sure, I think of course, the most important is how to scale. So if you look at, of course, the Prime Minister himself is visiting Facebook, and it's also some of the, I would say, the hyper-growth startups.
Exactly.
And of course, the Prime Minister and of course the officers with him are actually looking at those inspirations on how do you build $100 billion startups from India, and who could scale. Of course, InMobi is an excellent example that we always benchmark with, where which is founded in India and has scaled across the world as a product company. So I think it's not only that for the Prime Minister, I expect that I'm not expecting the Prime Minister only to make an appeal for American startups to invest in India, but it's also the other way around for outward investments, helping Indian entrepreneurs to, of course, enter the US markets. So,
and some announcements will also be around the corner.
Yeah, of course, he's already made it on the Independence Day as well, which is Stand Up India, Startup India.
And then when you set up your Matic, what really were the areas that you looked into while investing in Silicon Valley? And has that changed now? Has India changed in its ecosystem?
I think, when we started PubMatic, right, our vision was not local. So, we had to go global, and we had to invest in US, right, primarily because the advertising market at that point in time was very booming out here. But, we had a two-prong approach. We said that, let's do the innovation in India, and let's do the business side in the US. And I think...
Was that because it was easier to invest in the Silicon Valley?
It was easier to, rather than saying invest, I would say do business in the Silicon Valley was easier, right? To be very frank, at that point in time, 2006 in India, it was difficult to actually have people to pay you back for the, I'd say the business that you're making for them, right? Whereas in the US, the payment terms and stuff were pretty well defined, right? So if you are helping a customer out, you get payment on a timely basis, right? But the things have changed, right? If you go back for last 2 to 3 years, things in India have changed drastically, right? And I think, even the startup culture, right, has changed a bit. Because previously when we started in 2006, people were not used to working for a company where they don't know what is going to happen next, right? And everybody wanted a very well-defined job, salary, hiring people. We took 6 months to hire the first guy. But right now, I think, PubMatic itself, there are some employees from PubMatic which actually went ahead and started their own startups, like you have MindTickle, Car IQ and stuff.
Blue Jeans, of course, is competing with the likes of Cisco. It obviously has a very strong competition, and you managed to break into the market share. My question to you is that going forward then, you've just raised about $75 million recently. Going forward, do you believe that investors are now more confident irrespective of the kind of competition that you see in the market?
We're about, a video platform for global business collaboration. So we wanted to, eat our own philosophy, and we had a team in India from day zero. As we talked about just now, 5 years ago, which was day zero for us, we found it really hard to attract people, as a startup. People wanted to work for much more established brand names. I can see over the last 2-3 years that has changed dramatically. Last 6 months, it has accelerated.
In what way?
In many different ways, and I go to Bangalore.
It's not just in terms of confidence; it's also in terms of actual changes being seen on the ground.
Absolutely, there's investments happening. I have to compete now with local Indian startups to hire. I think that's a real thing that's happening in the last 6 months. But for me, what makes the valley, right?
Yeah.
I go hang out on a Saturday morning if I'm not here. Like I'm at Phil's Coffee, in Palo Alto, and you can kind of see people sort of discussing some startup plan or brainstorming some new idea. You can see that happen in Bangalore right now.
Poshmark, of course, has you set up in India and you expanded in Silicon Valley, if I'm correct.
Yes.
So Poshmark, the platform is available specifically in the US. It's not opened up to India yet, but you're looking at an India expansion.
We are, yes.
You are. Okay. So what I want to understand from you, Manish, from the policy point of view, and taking from Alagu's point, from the policy point of view, do you believe that things have changed? Now that you're going to launch in India, do you believe that it is becoming easier for you to actually look at expanding within the startup ecosystem in the country?
I think the answer is guarded somewhat.
Somewhat.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is
so you're not as optimistic as Alagu and
No, I would say I'm very optimistic about India and Indians and what's happening in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. But I do think that the processes have to be simplified even further across the board. Actually, if you look at the most innovative models that are happening today, they're marketplaces, right? We are a marketplace. You look at Ola, Uber, they are marketplaces. And I think marketplaces as models are inherently friendly to the Indian mindset because all of us are entrepreneurial in our nature.
Exactly.
And these are platforms for entrepreneurs, which is favoring the growth at a very grounds level because you're empowering the individual.
Yeah.
And that is very, very friendly towards the Indian ecosystem by and large. The second thing which is actually happening is the distribution of the mobile as a platform. And if you look at a lot of the initiatives that the Prime Minister is focused on, it's really providing that connectivity at a broader level.
From your point of view, Osmo hasn't opened up in India just yet. You just set up in 2013. You're an ex-Googler. You come from the land of innovation. Do you believe that in terms of the innovative capacity, entrepreneurs still have their hands behind when it comes to innovating, when it comes to taking risks in an economy like India, where clearly bankruptcy laws are also not very well defined?
Yeah, so I think there are many different types of innovations. The one would be innovation where you see a model working on the West, for example, in this country, and try to bring the same model back in India.
Yeah.
And I think the risk is different there. The risk is about how does this model fit into an Indian market.
Okay.
And you can learn a lot of lessons. And I think I'm not saying it's easier, it's less riskier in some sense because somebody else has proven the model. I think where it gets much harder, we are in the same category is where you're defining a new category.
Okay.
So, for example, with Osmo, we are really trying to define a category in sort of learning, creativity with sort of digital age. And you really need an ecosystem of early adopters. I think that's actually a big one because for us, we started a hardware product we launched last year, and we got a tremendous response from early adopters in this country. To me, without the early response, it would have been impossible for us to build the momentum and build this sort of ecosystem around.
So would you say in that case that it is easier to start in Silicon Valley and then expand in India and not vice versa?
I wouldn't generalize, but I would say it's actually much easier to introduce a new category over here because I think there's the consumer mindset is pretty open to new ideas. So the whole, like, if you look at the Kickstarter movement, is big in this country because some small shop come up with an idea, put something on Kickstarter, and you get a huge momentum. I think that's important for new ideas to come alive. But I do think that's changing a lot. I think there's a lot of positive energy. I have friends back who moved from Valley to India, and when I talk to them, I can see this sense of optimism. And I think people are. I would say like a lot of Apple devices, for example, or these tablets and phones have leveling up the playing field in many, many ways. Where you have the same experience over here and back in India. So I think you can innovate at the same rate. So I'm very optimistic.